Hello, everyone, and welcome to the official YouTube channel of Joel Preston, author and the home of the Old World Saga, a great action-adventure / contemporary fantasy series that you've never heard of, written by yours truly. I currently have tens of fans, and I'm hoping that in starting this channel, I can add a 0 to that number. When you measure success across different variables other than just sales or visibility, the metrics that actually measure success, then my book series has taught me a lot about how to achieve what at first seems impossible to achieve, and then the positive and negative consequences of putting your work out there into the world. This is my book series, The Old World Saga. Cue epic intro. The Old World Saga currently consists of 4 full-length novels and 4 novellas. These specific ones look a little bit beat up because they're my reading / editing copies. I'm currently working on a 5th novel and a 9th entry to the series, and figured it might be better to speak to an audience here rather than just my beleaguered parents or my pet cat who really doesn't seem too interested.
Come on, read it. Read it. Not interested at all.
The 5th book is looking to be a massive, massive story, and it's really exciting, so I want to be able to talk about it. I experimented with some advertising in the early days of this project, but gave up on that pretty quick, because the Old World Saga is my passion project, and while I would love for it to find its audience, I've faced some obstacles entirely of my own making, which I will make a future video about, so hopefully you, if you're an aspiring author, can avoid some of my pitfalls. I've received some great reviews, and I've received some really dreadful ones, which, in fairness, were probably deserved. This book series has been written by me for me, and when I first started, I had no idea how to write a novel. To explain how clueless I was, you know how the typical format of a book is blocks of text with indents? You all know what a typical book looks like this. Well, when I wrote my first book, it was written in paragraphs like an essay. From then to now, I've learned so much that I wouldn't have without just doing it. It was one of those things where I just went, screw it, and gave it a go. And it gave me a passion and purpose in life beyond just the usual going to work and going to the gym, which over time really just robs you of yourself if you have nothing else. That being said, I have done absolutely everything wrong that you could possibly do wrong in writing my book series. And that is where some of my insight may be useful to others, because everyone wants to write a book. And if I can help you avoid some of my mistakes, and more importantly, help you cultivate that inner spark, then all these tireless hours and words on a page will have slightly more value. Which brings me to why you should watch this video and any future videos. It is a great question, and one I've contemplated a lot in whether I have anything to offer on this platform. Well, that's what I'm going to talk about in today's video. This is going to be my introduction to myself, my book series, and an overview of what I plan to talk about in the coming months. As I learned the hard way, I can easily spend a year writing a book, yet I cannot blog or maintain a website to save my life. And my author social media is so lifeless, it may as well not exist. But for some reason, I think I can do YouTube, as I'm an addict of it myself. My book series is all self-published. I've never approached real publishers. However, that is a goal of mine in the coming years once I've finished my series. The first editions of my first few books would have never been considered by them regardless. What I would love more than anything is to be a full-time author. What a life to lead. The self-publishing world is full of all sorts of people. However, it is generally dominated by a few certain groups, namely women writing romance, fantasy. religious, non-fiction, and self-help books. I have no stats to back that up, but that's just a lot of what I've seen in the last half decade. My voice is perhaps a little different because I work a full-time job and I frequently travel for work and am constantly undergoing training and upskilling. And I've had to learn to balance all of that with the monumental task of writing a series. There was a time that it felt like I had all of the time in the world to sit and write novels, though that time came and went in the blink of an eye and was largely wasted. And nowadays, I've had to develop a system and really dive into the depths of my own psyche to find the motivation and drive to keep doing it. Writing is a really taxing activity. I can't overstate this. If you want to have a really good night's sleep, write 5,000 words that day and your brain will be so fried that you'll sleep like a baby. So before I give you the cliff notes on my writing journey, who am I? Other than being one of the millions and millions of people who's hoping for success in a creative endeavor. A lot of what happens in my early books is heavily inspired by events in my own life. Now, for those of you that have read them, I'm not saying I've encountered gods, aliens, or werewolves. At least if I had, I wouldn't be telling this platform. But the locations visited and some of the scenarios come straight from personal experience. I've also had the immense pleasure of very, very loosely basing some of my main characters on people I've met, and they're well aware of who they are. I've worked with and been friends with a lot of very accomplished people, and I enjoy poking fun at them and putting them in some absurd situations. And they've taken a lot of joy in the process too. The best characters come from the characters you've met in real life, obviously modified and removing their likeness. I've been fortunate enough to meet all of these great people and go to interesting locations because I've lived by the simple philosophy and the very Australian philosophy of just giving it a go. I've done some strange things like volunteering at schools and orphanages in Africa, teaching English in Japan, working in the Pacific. I've done some of the world's great hikes, like climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, walking to Everest Base Camp and the Overland Track in Tasmania. And I don't even like hiking. And I don't say that stuff to brag or to try big note myself or anything like that, because most of it I never really intended to do. Opportunities came up and I just said yes. And it's a similar philosophy that I've taken with my authorship journey. It's always better to do than not to do. Though with the books it's different in that you'll put your work out there, and some people will take a kind of vindictive joy in smashing you when they don't like it. The other side of the coin is that some people will genuinely like it, and it's handling that duality that I'm going to talk about on my channel. The early editions of my first 3 books were unconventional and not polished, and those problems still kind of linger. But like I said, I've done a lot wrong and learned from it, and that's wisdom I intend to share with you all. That's enough about me. Let's talk about my books. I'm going to give you the official blurb of the Old World Saga. This is the logo you saw before. It's on the back of all of the books. Because the logo was made after I had gone quite far into my series, the covers were already done, so I couldn't put it on the front anywhere. I will correct that one day, though. In 2019, the Vatican came into possession of a mysterious black book. Within its pages of alien writing and grotesque imagery was a powerful secret. Long ago, the god king Zeus disappeared in mysterious circumstances, leaving behind a colossal pocket of power, a power up for the taking by whoever can claim it first. The sudden return of long-lost Apollo means a race is about to begin to claim this ultimate power. 3 factions are at play: the hidden gods of old, the angels of heaven, and the demons of hell, each with their own motives. They all need one thing to complete the ritual: a link to the power of Zeus still lingering in the world. On the island of Corfu in Greece, a young Australian man encounters a monster from myth and receives a terrible curse. A curse born of Zeus. Now he is thrust into a world of gods, monsters, and war. With a team of Australian spies at his side, Joshua Dare is about to embark on the adventure of a lifetime. But can he tame the monster within? And what dark cosmic powers, beyond even the knowledge of the gods, are watching from alien worlds? Now, if that didn't spur any interest in you, you are overwhelmingly not alone. However, this is a story of God, wars, spies, adventure, and cosmic horrors beyond your comprehension. It combines elements of the old religions, contemporary religions, sci-fi, fantasy, and what Lovecraft left to us in the public domain. If you ever wanted a series that features Apollo, Cthulhu, and Jesus, then this is the series for you. Although I should give a PSA that I am not religious, and I do have some fun with religion in the series, but these books they're not anti-religious, and they don't bash religion in any way. They just exist in a world where most religions are true and coexist. So now that that's out of the way, let's talk about each book. And don't worry, I'm going to go through them super fast because they'll all get their own videos, and I don't want to go into spoiler territory here, just in case I can convince one person to read my series. If I can increase my sales from 0 a month to 3 a month, that'd be a nice bonus, as I could really use that extra $1.60 from Amazon. So my first book, In the Shadow of Monstrous Things, is by far my worst book. Hence why there are 4 editions of it in 5 years. But it's also a piece of my soul, and there have been people who've liked it enough to continue the series. And yes, I do kind of say that as a cope, but I do think where it's at now, it is enjoyable. And it is an interesting story of why and how I came to write it. And I will share that in a video coming soon. I'm going to try and keep this spoiler free, so the later books I'll just brush over, but mild spoiler warning here just in case. In the Shadow of Monstrous Things is the story of Joshua Dare, a 23-year-old university graduate on holiday in Europe with no real direction in life. He reluctantly goes out during a night in Corfu, and as a result of that decision, encounters a monster from myth and legend, a werewolf. He escapes with his life and an invisible bite mark that only appears in the unspoiled light of the moon. As the full moon approaches in his home city of Cairns, in northern Australia, he suffers a series of vivid dreams showcasing the life of King Lycaon, a Greek mythical figure and the first werewolf. Lycaon ran afoul of the goddess Selene and the god King Zeus, and was turned into a wolf. And that curse travelled through history to Joshua Dare. On the full moon, he transforms into a ravenous, bloodthirsty monster and loses all sense of himself. The trail of death and destruction he leaves is discovered by the government. Hunted, he reaches out to a group called the Old World, who offer him shelter in exchange for information, though there is more to this tale than just monsters in the moonlight. In the background, the lingering gods of old conspire as a greater tale weaves its threads to incorporate Josh, the last living link to Zeus's power, manifest in the world. Book 1 is a simple story that sets up a very interesting world. It is mostly through the POV of Josh, however features a couple of chapters from the perspective of Queensland Police Officer Jesse Bilyeu and Josh's girlfriend Danny Quinn. The 4th edition is the current version of this book, and it should have a cover and a spine that look like this. If it doesn't, you have an old version and you should try to find a newer one. All of the ebooks available are the latest versions, and all of the old versions are non-canon, just because I've had to make small tweaks here and there. My second book, Rise Golden Apollo. This is the current edition. If you find a version that looks like this, do not read it. The original book had a lot of issues. Structurally, I tried something unique and it did not work. And I had to undergo a full rework to fix the plethora of issues in the story that I created. However, the new version's quite good. It is definitely more in the fantasy realm than the previous one. Rise Golden Apollo sets up the greater story, and this book was the one that I always wanted to write. However, I had to start with something simpler to find my feet. And I had to build the confidence to say, hey, well, I actually can write a book, so I'm going to sink my teeth into this story. The story of Rise Golden Apollo takes place in 3 parts. The first follows Melissa Pythia, an Australian spy working on a mission in Rome. Melissa is actually briefly introduced in book 1, but a lot of people seem to miss that. In fact, a lot of people wonder how this book connects to the first as they're reading it, which isn't revealed until the epilogue. However, it's super epic, for me at least. Melissa's mission puts her right in the middle of a conflict between the Gladius Vaticanus, a radical group of mercenaries employed by the Vatican, and a Roman crime family dealing in stolen artifacts. A mysterious object, an otherworldly golden sword, seems to call to her. She manages to obtain it and finds herself confronted by Hecate, goddess of magic, and Morpheus, god of dreams, as she learns the truth of who and what she is. She is the link to the golden god Apollo, and it is her destiny to pull him from his banishment out of time and space and back into the world. The second part of this story follows the battle of the underworld and the conquest by the legions of heaven over the gods of old. In 337 AD, Emperor Constantine of Rome converted to Christianity, and that conversion on his deathbed shifted the entire metaphysical landscape in favor of the angels of heaven. Led by Michael and Lucifer, the archangels make war on the realm of Hades and the lands of the dead. Gravely injured, Apollo is removed from reality to heal as Hades burns. Time flashes by in an instant for him as Hades becomes hell. Pursued by demons, Melissa pulls him from the fire. Now, with both spy and god captured by the Vatican, they learn that Apollo is needed for something greater. The forces of heaven and hell have acquired a tome full of dark writings called Necronomicon, and in its loathsome pages it speaks of a ritual to claim an overwhelming mass of power left behind by the vanished god Zeus. Apollo presents one element the angels need to claim that power and forever be beyond the reach of the vengeful surviving gods. Apollo and Melissa must work together to unravel a plot that could very well determine the fate of the world. Now, I love this book and this story. I was really able to test myself writing this, and my imagination could just absolutely run wild. There are so many references to famous stories and works peppered through this novel, so if you read it and you pick up on some of them, make sure you let me know. A cool thing about this book too, in particular, is that I commissioned these artworks to be designed just by an online artist so that I could have a visual guide in the story, because a lot happens during the Battle for the Underworld segment, and I thought it'd be good that if readers could place an image to the names, it'd be slightly less confusing. So, after Rise Golden Apollo, we enter the world of the first two novellas, Fear the Full Moon and the Wendigo Incident. Now, it is difficult for me to start talking about these without going into major spoiler territory, so it's just going to be quick. Fear the Full Moon takes place directly after the events of Book 1 and follows the story of Jesse Bilyeu, the police officer I mentioned before, as he struggles to survive in the wilderness of Southeast Asia. He is hunted by more than just the Australian government, and this is a much darker story, but very important for the end of the series. And I can't really say much more without going into spoiler territory. Whereas the Wendigo Incident is my shortest work. You can read it in an afternoon, and it is a lot of fun. This one picks back up with Joshua Dare, the protagonist of Book 1. Some events have transpired which mean that the US government needs him to help them deal with a supernatural threat of their own. A Wendigo has appeared in the gloomy forests of Minnesota, and sometimes it takes a monster to kill a monster. This novella is where I began to weave the Lovecraftian mythos into my series, and for those who love the genre of cosmic horror, I really try to do it justice, though my books aren't really horror, they're more action-adventure oriented, so take that with a grain of salt. Now we move on to main series book 3, In the Shadow of the Old World. And this book, as of right now, is the best book in the series. The 3rd edition recently came out, and I could not be happier with it. This is really where I started to find my feet as a writer. All 4 of the stories I mentioned come together in this one, and it's a globe-trotting adventure. I can't really speak to the story of it without spoiling it, unfortunately. Just in case there are people who are going to give my series a go, I don't want to ruin it. I do introduce a bit of Norse mythology in this one, which is cool. Earth's Mightiest Warrior, the next novella, is an abrupt departure from the rest of the series, but again is essential reading for the ending. I tried something really different here, and this novella was quite difficult to write. I wanted an ancient mythological hero to join my series, and I ended up settling on Sigurd from Germanic myth. If you haven't heard the tale of Sigurd before, then the first half of this novella is me retelling it, but modifying the tale to suit my series. And then the second half is similar to an Odyssey-style adventure. A lot of people have compared this stylistically to the Odyssey in its scope, and it really is a breath of fresh air because it's largely self-contained, except for the ending, which sets up Sigurd to join the adventure. It also required tons of research, and I noted a couple of good sources that I used in the introduction to this book. Next, we get to the brick. Fall Silver Artemis is the story of Danny Quinn, a newly recruited spy for the Australian Supernatural Task Force, and a girl who is trapped in circumstances way over her head. This is currently the largest novel in the series, although the one that I'm working on now will be bigger. It's also still in its 1st edition and is in desperate need of some error correcting and a new manuscript so it can go on Amazon, which will be done this year, but it is a lot of work. Again, I can't really discuss this book without spoiling events from the previous ones, but we do get to see Cthulhu in the flesh in this one, so that should intrigue some of you watching this video. And lastly, Strange Lights in a Dark World takes place during the events of Fall Silver Artemis, following a character that vanished in bewildering circumstances. And this is easily the most bizarre of my stories. It takes place outside the universe in the domain of the outer god Yog-Sothoth. And again, for the sake of spoilers, I'm not going to say too much. That's where I'm at now, and that overview should give you a very simple, brief idea of the story I'm telling, which is actually quite complicated as I've learned approaching the end of it. Like I said, these books were written by me for me. So for those of you out there that share my tastes, you're going to enjoy these a lot. Some of the ideas I've implemented across my series I've had since I was a kid, and it was like they were just all waiting there in my mind for me to stop being lazy and actually put pen to paper. I think that just about covers off on my series, so if you want to check out book 1, have a look on Amazon. That's probably the best place to buy it. Also, remember, this old version of Rise Golden Apollo, if anyone out there is rich, please buy all the copies you can and throw them in the bin so I can finally get them out of circulation. I've been trying to do it myself, but it's turned into a very expensive exercise. Thank you for sticking through to the end of this video. My goal is to release 1 video a month here. However, to start off with, I will get a few up in the coming weeks, so there is something to watch when people visit my channel. Please like and subscribe to follow along with my journey. I aim to produce videos soon on how I wrote my first book, the top 5 books I think people should read this year, and my choice of top 10 greatest mistakes you can make as a first-time author, and I guarantee I have made every single one of them. And for the 10 people out there currently reading the Old World Saga, I have an announcement to make. The final book in my series, In the Shadow of the Sundered King, is now looking to be so large it's going to need to be split into 2 books. So I'm proud to announce part 1, releasing this year, will be titled In the Shadow of a Mantled God, and I've just hit the 100,000 word mark on it. It's turning out to be a truly epic behemoth of a story, and stay tuned for future updates. The only other thing on my channel right now is my own reading of Fear the Full Moon as an attempted online audiobook. I cannot do accents, and the story required me to do several accents, so it is very cringy, but give it a listen and it might help you determine whether or not you like my writing style and you give the Old World Saga a go, which I hope that you do. So until next time, with a video coming soon, happy writing, Joel.